I said no to my stepdaughter's $20,000 demand. 90 minutes later, cops escorted me from my own house. My wife stayed silent. They thought they'd won. They had no idea what I'd been building for 6 years. By the time they realized what they'd signed, it was too late. My name is Robert Hutchinson. People call me Rob. I'm 61 years old, retired from pharmaceutical sales 3 years back after spending 35 years convincing doctors that our compounds were worth prescribing. I was good at it. Good enough to own my house outright, sock away a solid retirement fund, and still have enough left over to support a stepdaughter who treated my wallet like an ATM with no withdrawal limit. It was a Tuesday morning when everything shifted. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my second cup of coffee, watching the snow melt off the deck outside our house in Naperville. Karen, that's my wife, was upstairs getting ready for her book club meeting. Brianna came down the stairs with that look on her face. You know the one. The practiced smile, the slightly tilted head, the soft voice that meant she wanted something expensive. Rob, can we talk for a minute? Brianna asked, sliding into the chair across from me. I set down my mug. Sure. What's on your mind? She pulled out her phone, started swiping through what looked like a business presentation. Lots of pastel colors, motivational quotes in fancy fonts, pictures of women doing yoga on beaches. So, I've been working really hard on expanding my coaching business, she began. And there's this incredible opportunity. There's a transformational leadership retreat in Sedona next month. It's exclusive, invitation only, and it would completely elevate my brand. All the top coaches in the industry will be there. I nodded, waiting for the number. There's always a number. The investment is $20,000, she said, not missing a beat. But Rob, this is exactly what I need to break through to the next level. I'll pay you back once my client base expands. This retreat teaches advanced certification techniques, and I'll be able to charge 3 times what I'm charging now. $20,000. For a retreat. I'd heard this song before, different verses, same chorus. The social media marketing course that would change everything. The personal branding photo shoot that cost $4,000. The website redesign from a guru who promised viral success. No, I said, just that. One syllable. Calm, clear, final. Brianna blinked. What? I said no, Brianna. I'm not funding this. Her expression shifted. The smile disappeared. Her jaw tightened just slightly. You're joking, right? I'm not. You got a pattern here, and I'm not enabling it anymore. Every few months, it's another course, another program, another investment that's going to change your life. Nothing ever changes except my bank balance. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the tile floor. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything Mom and I have been through, after all the support we've given you. Support they've given me? I'd paid for her college. Twice, because she dropped out the first time to find herself. I'd co-signed her car lease, covered her rent when her coaching income dried up, bankrolled her health insurance. But I didn't say any of that. I just sat there, hands wrapped around my coffee mug, looking at a young woman who'd turned into a stranger. My answer is no, I repeated. She stared at me for a long moment, and I swear I saw something calculating move behind her eyes. Then she turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word. I should have known that silence wasn't acceptance. It was planning. Less than 90 minutes after I told Brianna no, 2 police officers stood in my driveway. I was still at the kitchen table, working through some paperwork for my retirement accounts, when I heard the doorbell. Through the window, I saw the squad car parked at the curb. My first thought was that something had happened to Karen. Maybe an accident. Maybe someone broke into her car at the book club. I opened the door, already feeling that cold weight in my stomach. Robert Hutchinson, the taller officer asked. He was maybe 40, with tired eyes and a notepad already in his hand. That's me. What's going on? Sir, we need to ask you some questions. We receive a report about an incident that occurred here earlier today. Can we come inside? I stepped back, let them in. My mind was racing, trying to connect dots that didn't make sense. What kind of incident? The second officer, younger, stayed near the door. The first one looked at his notepad. We understand you had an interaction with Brianna Hutchinson this morning. Is that correct? My stepdaughter? Yeah, we talked. She asked me for money. I said no. That was it. Can you describe the nature of that conversation? I explained it. Calmly, clearly. She wanted $20,000 for some retreat. I declined. She left the room. End of story. The officer wrote something down. Sir, Miss Hutchinson filed a report stating that during this conversation, you became aggressive. She says you stood up suddenly, moved toward her in a threatening manner, and used intimidating language. She felt unsafe. For a moment, I couldn't process the words. They sounded like they were coming through water. I'm sorry, what? She's alleging verbal intimidation and threatening behavior. That's insane. I never stood up. I never raised my voice. I sat at the kitchen table and said no. That's it. That's all that happened. The younger officer finally spoke up. Sir, is there anyone else who was present during this conversation? No. My wife was upstairs getting ready to leave. It was just me and Brianna. They exchanged a glance. The kind of glance that told me everything I needed to know. Her word against mine. And they were already leaning toward hers. We're going to need you to come down to the station to answer some questions, the first officer said. Just routine. We need to document both sides of the story. Am I under arrest? No, sir. But we do need your cooperation. I looked past them, toward the stairs. Karen was standing at the top, one hand on the railing. She'd heard everything. I waited for her to say something, to come down, to tell these officers that this was absurd, that I'd never threatened anyone in my life. She didn't move. She just stood there, watching. Let me get my coat, I said quietly. They walked me out to the cruiser. Not in handcuffs, but the neighbors saw. Mrs. Patterson across the street was standing on her porch, phone already in her hand. By the time we reached the station, I knew the whole neighborhood would be talking. At the station, they processed me. No charges filed, just documentation. They took my statement, asked the same questions 3 different ways, tried to find inconsistencies that weren't there. I told them the truth, plain and simple. When they finally let me go, it was late afternoon. I called Karen. No answer. I texted her. Nothing. I drove to a hotel near the interstate and checked in for the night. Sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, trying to figure out how my life had gone sideways in less than 6 hours. That's when I remembered something. Something I'd built years ago, after my business partner tried to screw me out of my share of a lucrative territory deal. Something I'd hoped I'd never need to use. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Leonard Shaw, attorney at law. I hit dial. Leonard Shaw's office was in a strip mall between a tax preparer and a chiropractor. Nothing fancy, no marble floors or mahogany desks. Just a man who knew the law better than anyone I'd ever met. I'd first crossed paths with him 7 years ago when my former business partner, a guy named Rick Greenwell, tried to cut me out of a major commission deal. Leonard helped me navigate that mess, and in the process, taught me something valuable. Never trust handshakes when you can have contracts. I walked into his office the next morning, carrying a fireproof lockbox I'd kept in my car trunk. Leonard looked up from his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose. He was 63, thin as a rail, with gray hair combed straight back. Rob, didn't expect to hear from you again. Wish I didn't have to call, I said, setting the box on his desk. But here we are. I explained everything. Brianna's request, my refusal, the police visit, Karen's silence. Leonard listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. So your stepdaughter filed a false report, and your wife is backing her version of events. She hasn't said she's backing it, but she's not defending me either. That's the same thing. Leonard nodded slowly. What's in a box? I opened it. Inside were documents I'd organized after the Greenwell situation. Property deeds, trust agreements, refinancing paperwork, account transfer forms. Everything meticulously labeled and filed. After Rick tried to screw me, I made a decision. I explained. I'd never let myself be vulnerable again. When Karen and I refinanced the house 4 years ago, I restructured how the title was held, created an LLC to hold the property. She signed everything without reading it. Leonard pulled out the refinancing documents, flipping through pages. He stopped at page 28, paragraph 4. Conditional transfer clause. Triggered by verified false legal claims. Exactly. And the trust, he asked, pulling out another folder. Set up 3 years ago. Brianna was listed as a potential beneficiary. But there's a retroactive exclusion clause. If any beneficiary commits fraud or files malicious legal misrepresentation against me, they're removed. Permanently. Leonard studied the documents for several minutes. Finally, he looked up. You built yourself a legal fortress. I built myself a way out if I ever needed one. Do you want to execute these triggers? I thought about Karen standing at the top of those stairs, silent. About Brianna's calculated expression when I'd said no. About sitting in that police interview room, defending myself against lies. Yes, I said. Start the process. Leonard pulled out a fresh legal pad. Then we need to move carefully and quickly. First thing, we document everything. Second, we file the trigger notifications. Third, we prepare for the fallout. How bad will the fallout be? He looked at me over his glasses. For them, catastrophic. For you, you'll walk away clean, but you'll walk away alone. I nodded. I'd already lost my family the moment Brianna picked up that phone to call the police. Let's do it, I said. Leonard worked fast. By that afternoon, he'd filed the first set of notifications with the county recorder's office. The conditional transfer clause was now active, pending verification of Brianna's false statement. All we needed was proof that her allegations were fabricated. The police report will help, Leonard explained, spreading documents across his desk. But we need something stronger. Something undeniable. Like what? Like her own words contradicting the official statement. Like evidence showing no confrontation occurred. I thought about it for a moment. My neighbor has one of those doorbell cameras. The kind that records everything. Leonard's eyes lit up. Which neighbor? The Pattersons. Across the street. Their camera faces our driveway and front door. Go talk to them. Today. Get that footage before it auto-deletes. I drove back to Naperville that evening, parking 2 blocks from my house. Walked to the Pattersons' place just as the sun was setting. Doug Patterson answered the door, looking uncomfortable the moment he saw me. Rob. Hey. He didn't invite me in. Doug, I need a favor. You got that Ring camera on your front door, right? Yeah, why? It probably caught me leaving with the police yesterday. I need that footage. It'll prove I wasn't aggressive, wasn't fighting, wasn't any of the things my stepdaughter claimed. Doug shifted his weight. Look, man, I don't want to get involved in whatever's going on with your family. I'm not asking you to get involved. I'm asking you to show me what your camera recorded. That's it. He hesitated, then sighed. Wait here. 5 minutes later, he came back with his phone, pulled up the app, scrolled to yesterday's afternoon timeline. There it was. Me opening the door, the officers standing calm and professional, me walking to their cruiser without resistance. No handcuffs, no struggle, no aggression. Just a man cooperating. Can you send that to me? I asked. Doug looked torn. Rob, my wife's already nervous about this. She's friends with Karen. I understand. But this is my life they're destroying. Please. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then nodded. Give me your email. The video hit my inbox before I made it back to my car. I forwarded it immediately to Leonard with the subject line, evidence. He called me 20 minutes later. This is good. Really good. Shows you were calm, cooperative. Contradicts any narrative about aggressive behavior. What's next? Now we wait for the police to close their investigation. Once they determine there's insufficient evidence, that becomes the trigger. The moment that report is filed, your clauses activate automatically. I sat in my car, watching my house from 2 blocks away. Lights were on in the living room. Karen's car was in the driveway. Brianna's little hybrid was parked behind it. They thought they'd won. Thought they'd push me out, taken control. They had no idea the ground was already shifting beneath them. 3 days after I met with Leonard, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Wyoming area code. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something made me answer. Rob Hutchinson. The voice was rough, weathered. Familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. Speaking. It's Tony. Tony Briggs. I sat down slowly. Tony Briggs. Brianna's biological father. The man who'd disappeared when she was 4 years old, leaving Karen to raise her alone until I came along. I'd never met him. Never even seen a photo. Karen refused to talk about him. How did you get this number? I asked. Wasn't hard. I've been keeping tabs on my daughter. Saw what happened with the police report. Figured you might want to hear what I know about Brianna and her mother. What are you talking about? Tony let out a dark laugh. Karen's got a pattern, man. She did the same thing to me 15 years ago. We got in an argument about money. I said no to something she wanted, and boom. Next thing I know, she's filing a restraining order, claiming I was abusive. Took me 2 years and 10 grand in legal fees to clear my name. My mouth went dry. You're saying she coached Brianna to do this. I'm saying the apple doesn't fall far. Karen's been teaching that girl how to manipulate men since she could walk. When I heard Brianna filed charges against you, I knew exactly what was happening. History repeating itself. Why are you telling me this? Because I got screwed, and I don't want to see another guy go through it. Also, because I got documentation. Court records, transcripts, the whole 9 yards. If you need proof that this is their playbook, I've got it. I gave him Leonard's contact information. Told him to send everything directly to my attorney. After we hung up, I sat in the hotel room staring at nothing. Karen hadn't just enabled Brianna's lie. She trained her for it. Leonard called me that evening. Your friend Tony sent me 15 years of documentation. Rob, this is a pattern. Karen filed false allegations against him, got caught lying, and the case got dismissed. It's all here. Can we use it? Absolutely. Shows a history of manipulative behavior. If this goes to court, it'll destroy Karen's credibility. But I wasn't thinking about court. I was thinking about how many years I'd wasted trusting someone who'd been playing me from the start. The investigation closed 2 days later. Insufficient evidence. The detective called me personally to apologize for the inconvenience. Said Brianna's statement had inconsistencies, and the doorbell footage contradicted her timeline. Leonard called 30 minutes after that. The trigger just activated. Want me to proceed? I thought about Karen, standing silent at the top of those stairs. About Brianna, weaponizing the system against me. About Tony's warning. Full speed ahead, I said. The first document hit the county recorder's office on a Tuesday morning. A notice of conditional property transfer, executed under the LLC agreement Karen had signed 4 years earlier. The house was no longer jointly owned. It was now solely under my LLC's control, with Karen listed as an occupant pending review. She called me that afternoon, voice shaking. Rob, what is this? The mortgage company sent me something about the title changing. Read the paperwork you signed, Karen. It's all there. I don't understand. This says I don't own the house anymore. That's correct. When you back Brianna's false accusation, you triggered a conditional clause. Your ownership rights were voided. Silence. Then, quieter. You can't do this. I already did. Check your bank accounts while you're at it. I hung up. 30 seconds later, Leonard confirmed the second wave. Joint accounts frozen. Karen's access revoked, pending investigation of fraud. Credit cards canceled. Her name removed from my emergency funds. By that evening, Brianna had figured out too. She showed up at Leonard's office, banging on the door after hours. He called me from inside, speakerphone on. Your stepdaughter is outside my building. Making quite a scene, Leonard said calmly. I could hear her shouting in the background. This is illegal. I'm calling my lawyer. Tell her to read the trust documents, I said. She's been removed as a beneficiary. Retroactively. Every cent I set aside for her is gone. Leonard walked to the window. Miss Hutchinson, I'm going to call the police if you don't leave the premises. The shouting stopped. I heard footsteps retreating. That went well, Leonard said dryly. 3 days later, the real damage became visible. Brianna's lifestyle coaching business, the one she'd built on Instagram and empty promises, started collapsing. Her office space, the trendy loft she'd been renting downtown, sent her an eviction notice. The landlord had contacted Leonard after receiving notification that my personal guarantee was revoked. Without my financial backing, she couldn't cover rent. Her investors, 2 acquaintances I'd brought into her business as a favor, pulled out after receiving letters from Leonard stating I was no longer affiliated with her ventures. One of them called me directly. Rob, what's going on? We invested because you vouched for her. She lied to the police about me. Filed false charges. I'm not vouching for anything anymore. Jesus. Okay. Yeah, we're out. Brianna tried to pivot. Changed her business name. Rebranded her Instagram. Posted about new beginnings and cutting toxic people out. But the damage was done. Her followers could smell desperation. Within a week, she'd lost 30% of her audience. Karen tried a different approach. She showed up at the hotel where I was staying, waiting in the lobby. When I walked in from dinner, she stood up, mascara smudged, hands shaking. Rob, please. Can we just talk? I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I'd married, who I'd trusted, who'd stood silent while her daughter destroyed me. Talk about what, Karen? We can fix this. I'll make Brianna tell the truth. I'll explain to the police that she exaggerated. It's too late for that. It's not too late. We're still married. We can work through this. I shook my head. No, we can't. Because I know about Tony now. I know what you did to him. This wasn't a mistake. This is who you are. Her face went pale. He contacted you? He did. Sent me all the court documents. 15 years ago, you filed false allegations against him too. Same playbook, different victim. Karen's hands dropped to her sides. That was different. No, it wasn't. You taught Brianna this. You trained her to weaponize accusations when she doesn't get what she wants. And now you're both paying for it. I walked past her to the elevator. She didn't follow. The first threatening message arrived 3 days after my confrontation with Karen. Text from an unknown number. You think you're smart? Watch your back. I forwarded it to Leonard immediately. He told me to document everything. Don't respond. The second message came that night. Karma's coming for you. Then the phone call started. Middle of the night, blocked numbers, heavy breathing on the other end. I stopped answering, let them go to voicemail. Most were silent. One had a muffled voice saying, "You'll regret this." Leonard filed a report with the police, but they couldn't trace the numbers. Burner phones, probably. The harassment escalated. Someone spray-painted abuser on my car windshield while it sat in the hotel parking lot. Security footage showed a figure in a hoodie, face obscured. This is Brianna's doing, I told Leonard. Or one of her friends. Probably. But we can't prove it yet. The breaking point came when I found a nail under my tire. Deliberate placement, meant to puncture slowly. I had the tire replaced, kept the nail as evidence. Then something changed. A young woman approached me in a coffee shop, nervous, looking over her shoulder. "Mr. Hutchinson? I'm Amy. I was friends with Brianna." "Was?" I asked. "Not anymore. Look, I know what she did. She told me she was going to teach you a lesson for saying no. She practiced what she was going to tell the police." I heard her. My chest tightened. "Would you be willing to tell my attorney that?" Amy nodded. "I can't watch her destroy someone who didn't do anything wrong. She's been sending those messages. Her and her boyfriend Tyler." I called Leonard from the parking lot. Amy gave him a sworn statement that afternoon, including screenshots of text conversations where Brianna bragged about making you pay. Leonard smiled grimly after Amy left. This just became witness intimidation. I'm filing charges against Brianna today. That evening, the threatening messages stopped. Completely. Someone must have warned her that her former friend had talked. But the damage to her reputation was just beginning. Brianna must have realized she was drowning because she hired Mark Stedman. I knew the name. Everyone in Illinois legal circles did. Stedman was a high-priced attorney who specialized in reputation management for influencers and minor celebrities. His fees started at $15,000 for a retainer. Where Brianna got that kind of money, I had no idea. Maybe she borrowed it. Maybe Karen scraped together what was left of her savings. Leonard got the call on a Thursday afternoon. Put on speaker so I could listen from his office. "Mr. Shaw, this is Mark Stedman. I represent Brianna Hutchinson. I'd like to discuss a potential resolution to this situation." Leonard leaned back in his chair. "I'm listening." "My client is willing to issue a public apology and retraction of her statement to the police. In exchange, your client drops any civil claims and agrees to restore certain financial arrangements." "Financial arrangements," Leonard repeated slowly. "You mean the trust fund and property guarantees your client voided through her false accusation?" A pause. "Those arrangements were punitive and executed in bad faith. They were contractual and legally binding, triggered by actions your client took knowingly and willfully." I heard papers rustling on Stedman's end. "Mr. Shaw, be reasonable. My client made a mistake. She's young. She was emotional. Surely we can find middle ground here." Leonard looked at me. I shook my head. "Mr. Stedman, your client didn't make a mistake. She committed perjury, filed a false police report, and engaged in witness intimidation. We have evidence of all three. Middle ground would be me not pursuing criminal charges." Stedman's voice sharpened. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "We have a sworn statement from a witness who heard your client rehearsing her false allegations. We have text messages showing she planned this in advance. We have proof she sent threatening messages to my client after the fact, wanting to send the file to the DA's office." Silence. Long, heavy silence. When Stedman spoke again, his voice had changed. Quieter, strained. "Mr. Shaw, do you understand what this means for her future now? A criminal record will destroy any chance she has at rebuilding her career. She should have thought of that before filing false charges," Leonard said coldly. "There has to be something we can negotiate." "There isn't. Your client made her choices. Now she lives with them." Please. Just consider. Leonard hung up. Looked at me across the desk. He's desperate. That's good. Will he go away? For now. But he'll try again. They always do. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of defending myself against lies. Tired of watching people I'd helped turn into enemies. But I wasn't stopping. Not when I come this far. The neighborhood turned on them faster than I expected. It started with Mrs. Patterson posting the doorbell footage on the community Facebook group. She wrote a simple caption: "Before you judge a man, know the facts." Within hours, the video had been shared 200 times. Comments flooded in. People who'd avoided me suddenly apologized. Others demanded answers from Karen and Brianna. Someone organized a gathering at the community center. I didn't attend, but Leonard did. He told me later that 40 people showed up, most wanting to hear the truth. One neighbor, a retired attorney named Bill Crawford, stood up and spoke. "I've known Rob Hutchinson for 8 years," Bill had said. "He's helped half the people in this room with financial advice. Fixed my fence after the storm. Loaned my son money when he lost his job. This man isn't a threat. He's the most decent person I know." Others echoed similar stories. The tide shifted completely. By week's end, Karen couldn't leave the house without people staring. Brianna's car got egged twice in the driveway. I felt no satisfaction watching them become pariahs. Just emptiness. Detective Mills called me with an update. "We're charging Brianna with filing a false report and criminal harassment. The DA thinks it's solid. She'll probably take a plea deal." What about Karen? Nothing criminal on her end, but she's certainly not winning any popularity contests. The divorce papers were filed 3 days later. Karen didn't contest anything. She couldn't. The prenuptial agreement I'd insisted on 11 years ago, which she'd signed without reading, protected everything I'd brought into the marriage. Leonard handled it efficiently. Karen would leave with her personal belongings and nothing else. The house, the accounts, the investments, all mine. She'd have to start over at 54. Brianna's plea deal came through 2 weeks later. Guilty plea to filing a false report. 6 months probation, community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent record. Her coaching business was finished. Her social media accounts stayed private. The girl who wanted $20,000 to elevate her brand had nothing left to elevate. I stood in the empty house 8 months after everything started. Karen and Brianna had moved out 3 weeks earlier, relocated to Indiana to live with Karen's sister. I'd heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Karen was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Brianna was stocking shelves at a retail store. The house felt different now. Cleaner somehow, despite the dust. Tony Briggs called me one last time before I put the place on the market. "How you holding up, Rob?" "Better than I expected." "You?" "I'm glad someone finally beat Karen at her own game. Took me years to recover for what she did. At least you were prepared. Thanks for the warning. Probably saved me more than you know." After he hung up, I walked through each room one final time. Remember the good years before things turned poisonous. But those memories belong to a different life now. Leonard had handled everything perfectly. The house sold within a month to a young family. I used the proceeds to buy a smaller place in Michigan, near the lake where I used to fish as a kid. My old friend Jake, the one who'd stood up at that community meeting, helped me move. As we loaded the last box into the truck, he asked, "Any regrets?" "About protecting myself." "No." "About trusting them in the first place?" "Maybe." "You did right, Rob. Standing up for yourself isn't wrong." I drove north the next morning. Didn't look back. The new place was simple. 2 bedrooms, wood-burning stove, view of the water. No ghosts, no history, no lies. I spent my days fishing, reading, occasionally consulting for former clients who still trusted my judgment. Lived quietly, kept to myself, let the past fade into background noise. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. Brianna had unblocked me and sent a message. "I'm sorry for what I did. I was wrong. I hope you can forgive me someday." I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Forgiveness requires trust, and that well had run completely dry. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. I set the phone down, picked up my fishing rod, and walked down to the dock. The water was calm, the sky clear. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. That was enough.